Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host Andy,
And I'm your co-host Josh.
and today we are running down our final thoughts on the Evil Dead franchise.
We are, and this is also Andy's last episode as the co-host, so it's kind of bittersweet. I feel like this is what Regis like felt like after like Kathy Lee decided to leave and like going through co-host.
Oh, that means a lot. It means a lot. But we knew it was going to be temporary when this ride started.
Yeah, and it was a good ride, man. Like I think we had some really great conversations. I really value you coming in and doing this for Evil Dead April and also the bonus episode with our friends over at Fredheads for Nightmare 3.
Oh man, dude, it was my honor, and I love this show. I love this whole organization. So to be a part of it, I'm honored to even be asked. And plus, we didn't just talk about these awesome movies. We got to watch all those sweet independent movies from the Horrific Hope Festival. So I had a great time. So as busy as I was in this time, it was taking breaks to watch all that stuff, new and old, that ended up being great. And I'm on board.
Yeah, so maybe Andy will be back.
Oh
We're
yeah,
gonna take
yeah. This isn't the end of me. It's just the end of me every week.
yeah. We're gonna take a break from live shows next week. We're gonna do creature feature weekend. We have a lot of great interviews, including Danny Lloyd from The Shining and the Chiodo brothers. I hope I said that right, from the minds behind Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and some awesome interviews as well. But then Nugs, the final girl, our friendly neighborhood final girl, is going to be stepping in to Andy's position until Mark gets back, and I'm super excited because I love podcasting with her for Advent Calendar and the other ones that we did last year. So uh she's got some big shoes to fill from Andy though.
Does she? I mean, I had the luxury of kind of sticking with one franchise the whole time. Are you guys doing any theme, or are you just is it going to be picking and
No.
choosing? No, man.
Uh so our first two episodes, I can announce it, are gonna be Spring from Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson. If you guys want to stream it ahead of time for the conversations, it's now streaming on Shudder. And we're also the second one we're going to be doing is called Clock, and that one is now streaming on Hulu, and it's currently my favorite film of the year. So I'm really excited to be podcasting about it. But
So
yeah,
I
so
haven't seen those. Yeah, I haven't seen those, and if I find the time to squeak in, I'm going to just so I don't get FOMO, I'll at least watch the movie so I could listen to the episode when you guys come out.
well, yeah. So today we're gonna be talking at the kind of like the epilogue is kind of like our overall thoughts, as Andy said, but also looking at the documentary Hail to the Deadites, which is currently streaming now on Shudder. And I really think it's interesting that we started your run as co-host with a documentary about Freddy Krueger, it's fandom, and we're ending it with a Evil Dead fandom documentary.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't not draw the parallels between the two. I mean, just I mean, obviously one was a little more independent than the other, but structure wise, the way it could pick certain fans, told their story, and like at the end of the day, wasn't even really about the movies. Like it was more about the love of it. So it was cool. I hadn't heard of this Hail to the Deadites. When you brought it up, I just looked it up, and yeah, I guess it just came out. I think 2021, so it's real recent.
Yeah, I'm curious, like as a horror fan, because maybe I just like don't relate to this, um, but like I've never been a one like franchise kind of fan when it comes to it.
I thought of this too.
And like so it's really interesting hearing like stories of like especially in this like with the radio DJ that like ends up like losing his son a year into his life and like naming him after Ash and the reason why they named him Ash, and The couple that got married around like Evil Dead stuff and
And
like
the two friends who basically like saved for almost a full year, I think they said they just like we lived off soup for a couple of months just so we could make sure we had spending money. Yeah.
yeah, like I've never been there. So like it's to hear stories like this, it's always like really surprising to me.
Yeah, I had that feeling too because I'm kind of like you where I have love for so many different franchises and like there are definitely ones that I would call my favorites, but I as a guy who just loves movies, I've never really been able to fathom that idea of just like focusing all my attention on one to such a degree. Like, and I love memorabilia, I love pictures. I got a signed Psycho picture right here to the right of me. I got this stuff on the wall, so I love celebrating different franchises. But yeah, I never had that either. And then also, I mean, I was hoping you would be able to connect a little bit more than me because I've never even been to a horror convention before. I've always kind of, as much as I love horror, it's always kind of just been like the thing I've done on my own. Even growing up, like I had friends who would come over and I'd show them certain movies, but I never really had like a close buddy growing up that loved horror alongside me. And saying even to today, like my soon to be wife Masha will watch tons of movies with me if I recommend them, but if Bruce Campbell news hits my phone, she doesn't really care, so I don't it's always been like a very insular thing for me. So I these two documentaries have actually been really cool because I've never seen documentaries about actually that's not true. I have a Halloween DVD that's about fandom from years ago. But yeah, I don't know, it's cool to just see this side of it.
Yeah, because I think that I've never like it's never been a thing for me. Like even like now, if you guys are watching this on our Patreon, thank you for supporting. But like even just like looking behind me, like I have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Planet of the Apes, Hellraiser, Halloween, Scream, Freddy versus Jason. Like I am right there with you. Like I love movies. Movies were always like my first love, but horror just happens to be my favorite genre. So like
Yeah.
I also think that like when you hear stories like from Fredheads and like from Hail to the Deadites as well, like you really have it's it's kind of the way that someone would get into like Star Wars or like Spider-Man or like Batman. It's that there was something significant that happened in their childhood that ultimately led to them being connected to these characters. And I guess I never had that experience growing up. Like I definitely have movies that I've connected to, like a Goofy movie, Halloween 2, Mean Girls. Like there are movies that like are linked to like special like growing moments in my life, but never like an entire like franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm the same way. And yeah, I think you nailed it too, because yeah, pretty much everyone in this movie, it didn't even always start from trauma. Just sometimes it would be like, well, that's the one my dad showed me when I was young, and like, that one guy had the story of his parents were divorced, and every time he went to his dad's house, they would watch a horror movie, and Evil Dead was the one that stuck out to him at that time. So, that was kind of that could have been his not olive branch, but it could have been a little life jacket in a time where he felt like everything was going wrong with because his parents were getting divorced, and he kind of clutched onto this movie. And yeah, I just feel like I don't really have that either. Like I said, I mean, I started watching horror movies around 14. I've been talking on this. I mean, probably younger in terms of like my cousins would have them on, and I'd be in the room kind of scared. But I didn't start watching them alone until I was about 14. And yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like it's not that I hid it from people, but it was just that I didn't really have anyone to relate it to. And so yeah, it was kind of just a fun thing, but also it is my favorite genre, but like it's weird if I listed my favorite movies of all time. I don't know how many would be horror. Like if I did a top 10, like it probably wouldn't be too many. It wouldn't be that horror heavy. It'd probably be like two out of the 10, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Like I definitely have ones that like I regard like I have just stressed on here how much I love Halloween 2. But I also like think Hellraiser is a perfect film. I absolutely love the Hellraiser from the 80s, but like yeah, I think I would be the same way. Like I'm a cinephile that like for as much as like if I had to sit down and like construct like my top 10 films of all time, definitely you wouldn't have like it would be like super heavy handed with the horror because like I grew up on things like Lion King, Little Mermaid, Hercules, Brave Little Toaster, like all of these like Disney movies that like so hold a deep place in my heart. My wife and I got into this like weird like routine of like every Sunday night we would just watch a 90s Disney movie for like
Right.
3 or 4 months. And it just recently stopped. And so but again, like it just kind of shows like my versatile taste in film.
Yeah. Which is like what I think why I liked watching this Hail to the Deadites. To switch gears and talk about the movie a little bit, I did find that I thought since it was so recent, like 2021, it would kind of talk about the franchise a little bit more currently. Do you know anything about this? Like, was this made over a long period of time? Because it seemed very much like almost like it was made in 2013. It seemed like a lot of the footage was from around then. They were talking about the remake like it was like a semi-recent thing. Do you know anything about that?
I don't, but I am like also like, to bring it back to like other franchises as I'm like looking it up. There are um uh took all right, so production took multiple years to make. Um the when making the documentary, Viva New chose not to include footage from the franchise, stating that he was proud to say that you will see and hear in this documentary was created by fans, which I think is really, really awesome that they did that. Like we talked to Paige afterwards, and she told us kind of like how long of a process like making Fredheads was.
Yeah,
Fredheads was also an hour longer than this.
yeah,
Um, so I'd imagine that this was probably this one, but I also took it as like the reason that they don't address um the any of like the Evil Dead remakes except for that like one particular scene when he's like explaining like the origins of how everything started um is just people is the same exact thing for like Nightmare on Elm Street where like people like diehard fans like won't either include New Nightmare because it's not canonical to like the original stories, or
hmm
they won't include the remake because it's not Robert Englund. So
yeah.
I kind of took it as it's almost kind of like the similar ideologies.
Yeah, I could see that. And just like in order to build this kind of hardcore fan base, kind of some time has to be built into it as well. So like, it was probably like while they were making this documentary, the remake was still pretty new. And as we discussed, it wasn't that well received at first. So I kind of think like I think in time people will the fans of that movie will come out. If my Reddit searches have shown, it's a lot of people who I would assume are now like 18, 19, who are like, oh my God, I saw this when I was 6 and it was the scariest thing I've ever seen. So it's like, and I think as they get older, they'll come out. So yeah, I guess that's a good point where it's those original three that those people have the rabid fan base has grown, and then a lot of people have come to an age where they've been able to afford a lot of this collectibles and memorabilias. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people in their early 20s aren't doing that just because they barely have rent money at that age.
Well, I also think too is that like there some of the way that the interviews are set up is you're focusing on they did like do interviews, and then like there are also like nods to like Ash versus Evil Dead because like Bruce Campbell talks about it like one point. He's like, fans kept begging me for years and years and years, when are we getting stuff? When are we getting stuff? So that's that's when we gave them the television show.
Yeah.
Um
That's also was my key that it was made earlier because he was talking as if that show was either about to come out or like
yeah.
being in the process of being made. But sorry, I cut you off. Go on.
No, no, that's what I was just gonna say. So, but like again, that's kind of what that portion of the film with his interview is what kind of made led me to believe that they just kind of ignored the Evil Dead because like I wrote that down in my notes. I was like, dude, like are we just like to this point where we just don't want to acknowledge it? Because I get it. Like there are certain fandoms that like won't acknowledge certain entries.
Yeah.
into the franchises for X, Y, or Z reasons.
Yeah, and I think it could be generational, like I was just saying, because a good portion of the people interviewed in this movie were all roughly not the same age, but like I would say in the same generation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could just be, and it could just be a choice from the director. Maybe they feel that way, maybe they just are like, hey, I'm an OG guy, or OG gal. I'm not sure. I didn't look up the director.
And that's like that's 100% like absolutely fine. Like that's kind of what like we did our when we did Halloween together on your show, like uh that's one of the things that like there are definite low points in the Halloween franchise as there are in many like horror franchises. And I that's the reason that I feel like I can't really feel like I can't commit to one.
Yeah,
But the Evil Dead's really interesting as a franchise, especially having gone back through it this time for the series, because every entry is like so solid. Like even the ones that like, as much as like I harked on like Evil Dead 2, like there are, Evil Dead 1981, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness 2013, Rise. All of them are just phenomenal movies in their own right.
yeah, dude, you nailed it. I think it's what I learned about this franchise watching this is that if you don't if not liking one of them, I think boils down to taste. And it's like, you're not that crazy about Evil Dead 2 because of taste, not because of the quality of the film. And
Yeah.
I'm not that crazy about Evil Dead 2013, and I've said it before, not because of the quality, it's not my taste. Like that level of gross isn't for me. But like I give all the filmmakers all the props in the world. I think it's a great movie. It's not my taste. So yeah, like, but Halloween, it's like you can kind of objectively say there's some bad entries, and it's like I like this, I don't like this because it's bad, not because like it went in a direction I didn't like. It's just so yeah, this I commend this franchise because it still didn't squeak into my top three of franchises, but a lot of that boils down to personal bias and taste for me. But it's
Yeah,
probably
and
four now. I think I just got up to four. It might have knocked
yeah,
Nightmare down to knocked down a peg.
all right, well let's like if you had to like throw out like the top three like franchises, like what would you say it is
I
for
mean,
for Andy?
yeah, I've already thought about this, but it's Halloween, and that's a lot of that is just my childhood. Like Michael Myers was my
Sure.
first, my first love, my first crush, my first gal. Uh, so it's Halloween for me, and then after that, it's Scream and Chucky. Like find so even with Chucky, like even there's good and bad because it's all Don Mancini's vision throughout it. I just love taking the roller coaster with that man. And so even on certain ones I don't like at all, and certain ones I love, and it's just like I'm all for it. But I find that one all the way up to the current TV show to just be fantastic. And Scream, after Wes Craven died, I wasn't sure where we were going, but I loved Scream 6. I don't think you and I have discussed it, but I don't know
Yeah,
how you feel, but I was a huge Scream 6 fan, so I'm with
it's
those are my three.
yeah. Yeah, I love it. Halloween's up there for me, just because I have a lot of ties to it.
I mean, the
Not
Halloween
this,
2 love in your life is
yeah,
huge.
Halloween too. But I love like Halloween, 1978. I love what they did with the most recent franchise. Trilogy is as much as I didn't necessarily like how it ended, it still holds my respect. But like talking about franchises you grew up on, like that's Saw. Like Saw was one of the first
Nice.
franchises that I got into as a horror fan, and so like I have a special place in my heart for that franchise. I know that they're making a 10th movie, and I'm super excited because they did some footage and teaser stuff this past weekend at CinemaCon. Um, but my like, dude, my number three would like it would be a toss up, honestly, between like depending on the day because like I love Chucky and I love Scream, but like Evil Dead is
Ooh,
like is really like it mean it really like imprinted on me this past year,
yeah.
this past couple months of just like seeing like and I love one of the things that I think is really fascinating about this. I feel like with other franchises, that we've mentioned, you could literally start at any film and have a basic understanding of the bad guy and how the rules of that franchise works. Whereas they said it in the beginning of this movie, your experience with Evil Dead depends on the film that you got introduced to. So if you got
Yeah.
introduced to Evil Dead 2, you are a lot more like a comedy. If you got introduced to Army of Darkness, then you have a higher tendency to like a lot of slapstick. But if you got introduced to the OG, your experience is going to be way different because that movie is way darker and way grosser and is a straight up horror.
Yeah, yeah. It got me thinking about my introduction, and I feel like I probably watched them in order, but I was, when I was getting into horror, the internet was popping, but we weren't streaming or anything yet. So like anytime I wanted to watch something, it was either go to the library and rent it or buy it if I had the money, but I didn't have that much money at 14.
Yeah.
Or rent it from Blockbuster. So I remember I used to just read about horror movies constantly, and so like I remember I would get like, I would never do this now, so I don't even watch trailers anymore, which is hilarious. But back then I would buy. I remember those HalloweenMovies.com. I don't even know if it's still up,
Mm,
and it was just a
I
fan
think
a
it
fan
is.
website that had a page for each movie, and they had screen grabs and told you the whole plot, and I would just read. And I remember, and that's how I got into franchises. And then I would, if I found the movies, I'd rent them and be so excited. So like, I know I went into this kind of knowing the deal, like kind of being like, all right, this first one's gonna be like independent, low budget, and gritty, and then the second one's gonna be a little Three Stooges-y. And so, even though I watched them in order, I still feel like because my sensibilities are just I love comedy so much, and when horror comedy is done right, it makes me so happy. So even though I agree with the theory of the movie that like what you're introduced to, but because I was a little maniac nerd who just sat on the computer and read synopsises, I feel like I didn't fall into that, but I totally agree.
I've been the oddball out this entire series because every guest that we had on the show talked about like finding it at like, either a young age or at least a teenager. Whereas I didn't see this series until I was already an adult. I had already formed my taste in horror
Yeah.
and had, watched them over the pandemic. And I really like gravitated towards the first film and loved it. But like because of the types of movies that I tend to gravitate towards within the genre of horror that are that I'm not I don't want to paint myself as like as someone that doesn't like horror comedy because I do.
For
I just
sure.
think it's a really hard like genre to like masterfully blend the two together.
And I find it so frustrating when I don't like it. Like if I don't
Yeah.
find it funny, then I'm just sitting there with like a sour piss look on my face the whole time, and I'm like, you guys aren't funny. Uh,
Yeah, and so like I think that's the reason that like I gravitate towards like more of like the serious elements of this franchise is
mhm.
because like that's just where I was and like my taste had already been developed, but also like I watched them in order and I just remember the first time being like um because like I don't know if you had this experience, but I had heard about so much about Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness that I actually didn't think that there even was an Evil Dead 1.
Oh,
Uh
interesting.
and like so like I thought it was kind of like this like whole like Troll 1 and 2 dynamic where it's like one the sequel outlived the other and I was
Yeah,
just like
I know you're not a video game guy, but it's like a Street
yeah.
Fighter 2 situation. Like for years, I didn't even know there was a
Yeah.
Street Fighter one. I finally saw it when I was like 28, and I was at a barcade, and it blew my mind.
You're just like,
And
oh,
it's
what is happening
and I
right
didn't
now?
think it was, and it's not that funny either. But go on, Street Fighter 2 is the best.
Yeah, so like I honestly like I thought that that's what it was and so like when I started like sharing on my social media everyone was like it's the first one's okay and I just remember like being like utterly blown away um by it and like it's still one of the very few movies that I've ever had and ever watched that still gets under my skin.
Mm.
Um and that's part of the reason that I love it because I feel like I'm really hard to scare and stuff like that. And so like if you can do that to me multiple times while I'm watching your film. If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm,
or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us. You have my respect.
No, I agree. I mean, the tree scene and the pencil in the ankle, those two alone, every single time I watch it, I'm kind of looking away.
Yeah, it was like also it's like Linda's shriek and like the way that like the makeup is like done, like even for like a low budget, like it's still really effective.
And the taunting, it's kind of what I loved
Yes.
about Rise. I don't remember if I brought that up in our episode, but like when the taunting in the hallway was so reminiscent to the first one, and I was like, that's something I've been waiting for a comeback.
Yeah, but I also like I really like there are things about two and Army of Darkness that I really love, and I love that this film explores like the welcoming nature of what these fandoms are like. It gives like an accurate description, and I can't say that I've ever had like I you brought up horror cons earlier, and I've been to several horror cons. I've never had any experience quite like um the experiences depicted in Fredheads or Deadites, where you are like walking away with like lifelong friendships. I've never had that experience yet. So yeah, you
It
like talk to people there, but like it's never like let's exchange numbers and go hang out afterwards.
Yeah, from my experience watching these movies, it seems like a lot of those were birthed online first, and then they were like, let's
Sure.
meet up.
Yeah, which I think Deadites does a better job at kind of like implementing that, because we're introduced to Bree Cummings, who I didn't even know this was a thing, and I wish that like IGN would do this for like other fandoms
Oh
too.
my God, yeah, right.
But IGN basically ran this contest to find the ultimate Evil Dead fan, and I think it was like in 2012 or 2013, but like the
It was
prize
to
was like
promote, yeah, to promote the
yeah.
remake. Oh,
Yeah,
but yeah,
so you got to meet Bruce Campbell, you got to see the trailer before anyone else, and um so I love that contest, but like also it's by putting a face on the internet of someone that wears the crown of ultimate Evil Dead fan, you have so many like you're now kind of like opening this can of worms for like this community to start online, grow, and then like effectively birth these lifelong friendships in real life.
yeah, yeah, that was super interesting. And I do wish IGN would do more stuff like that. Like we spoke up top where we said neither of us are true hardcore fans of one thing. Like I don't think I'd be able to win anything. I'd be like, I have one, like I got one little piece of artwork, and they'd be like, nah, we need more than that.
I
Um,
mean, yeah.
yeah, but it would still it would be really cool, and yeah, I just feel like movie promotion like that. I remember that when that movie came out, it was a pretty big deal. And I probably saw the ad on like Facebook being like, "Prove that you're the best fan," but I was just like, "Ah, that's not me." So
Yeah.
in all realness, I probably saw it at the time and just don't recall.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that like this film does really well with like the communal aspect is like showcasing like the positive side of online. Like while I think that like social media is definitely has its negative impacts on one's mental health with, like cyberbullying and y stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
Uh
or
yeah,
even
I
just
think
even the indirect stuff, just like seeing
yeah,
too much,
like
yeah, blah blah, whatever.
I think it also bursts like genuine friendships. Like, look at like us. Like we've never ever met in the same room. I came across Love What I Love randomly on Spotify and then like was like, I want to have you guys on my podcast. And you thought I was a spam
Dude, that's so
account.
funny. We're literally sitting here and being like, yeah, we never really had that where like you meet someone and like you make a friend and that's like borderline our story, we didn't. But that's hilarious. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, like, and it's easy to get bogged down because like, social media can get you depressed and it's easy to be like it's all bad, but no, when used, it is a tool, and when used the right way, it can actually be really helpful.
Yeah, I will say that probably like half of like the friends that I like talk to on a daily basis and like even some of the pretty much almost all of the board members on victims and villains is like have all come from online interactions. And I think it's just kind of like a small world, so like I don't necessarily relate specifically to like some of the stories in here, um but I think that the positivity and the impact that a fandom can make on one's mental health. You have movies like Deadites and Fredheads 100% proves it.
Yeah, definitely. And it really just like I love just promoting the idea that like horror fans for the most part tend to be very warm and nice people. And for such a violent style of movie, it's if you're not around it at all, you could just be like, wow, what kind of freaks like to watch that kind of stuff. And in reality, and I'm sure there are some people who are a bit crazy, but overall, the more and more I see like people who are really into horror, they just tend to be very open, kind of cool, accepting people.
Yeah, it's really like the first horror con I went to is it's really weird to like step into a horror con and like have that expectation and then you're like met with like just like this like insane like warmness and like people talking to you about their cosplays, and if you cosplay like you get to talk to people. It's like it really is like such a warm environment that I think it's really hard to like replicate. It's part of the reason that I love doing the film festival. Um, is because like not only are you getting to share this experience with people, but also at the same time, like one of my favorite memories from this past year is we closed with House of Thousand Corpses, and there was a gentleman who had been here both last year and this year and had never seen House of Thousand Corpses. He had seen Devil's Remake Rejects, but had never seen the house, and so like
Mm,
getting to kind of share that experience with him, and like I was talking to him afterwards, and he was like, "It's one of the best horror movies, one of the best grindhouse movies I've ever seen." I feel like I'm kicking myself because I hadn't watched it beforehand, but like just getting the chance to like have that experience with someone is so rewarding. And when you get to share your love of this genre with other people, you get to really have something special. And it's where community is based. And I love that this film explored also, like we brought it up earlier, but like Tom Sullivan helped facilitate a marriage proposal,
yeah.
and they like met and they shared the love over this franchise. And I just thought that was like so special because that's not a story that you get to hear very often.
No, it was that was a really sweet part of the movie, and I loved by putting that in the middle of there, it was really sweet. Uh and yeah, like I said, I've just never because I've never really loved a certain franchise that hardcore. Like it's almost hard to fathom to me that that's the way you would meet your partner, but it was pretty wild. I will say I was surprised in the end when they were divorced within a year. But I guess we
That
don't
broke
really,
my heart.
yeah. But it did say they found love and they started families. But man, I was shocked. I was like, the movie was ending. I was like, oh, what a really sweet ending. And not that that's not, who knows.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk about people I don't know. But it was just shocking after all that.
Yeah, it really was because I felt like the film did like a took a decent time to like kind of like lay out like how they met, how they planned the marriage proposal, how Tom got involved, and
I
so
wonder
it was
if
kind of
like I wonder if like
heartbreaking.
we were talking about how long it took to make this movie. Maybe they were working on it for like 5 years and like they were just about finished and then they got the news that they broke up and they were like, put a title card at the end, like and he like the director texted him, he's like, send me a picture of you and your babies. I need to turn this around. I know how
We got
movies
to
are
give hope.
made.
One of the things that I think is really cool about this movie is that it really embraces community and very first like title card in this movie. This is a documentary that is made for the fans by the fans. And so every recreation you have of the original trilogy is recreated by actors and animators and stop motion animators. Like I thought that was one of the coolest aspects of this movie.
Yeah, agreed. And it makes it stand out because I feel like showing clips and stuff, it's not that it's not cool, but like it's like the standard style that's been for ages now, and it kind of makes it feel a little corporate to me. To me, it's like, oh, like once you can get the clips, then I feel like you're playing a little bit of a ball game. So this kind of made it feel a little bit more kind of like punk rock and doing its own thing, where I didn't know you said the director kind of made the choice to not put the clips in. I wasn't sure if it was like a legal thing where it would just cost a lot of money to get the rights. And they're all different companies, so the 3 movies, you
Yeah.
have to get three different sets of rights. So I liked it, and I definitely loved that animation style. Like I don't know much about animation, so I don't know how to talk about it, but it just seemed kind of like uh
No, I
when
I
Beavis
agree
and
with everything.
Butthead
Yeah.
eat that cactus in the first movie. It kind of looked like that, you know.
Yeah. I really loved the animation style. Like I thought that, I feel like you see a lot. We're in the age now where like YouTube and like Vimeo where you can filmmakers can essentially make whatever stories they want to take and they can be these like fan films.
Yeah,
And I feel like, we are seeing a lot of them now. Like I've seen a lot for like Freddie, I've seen a lot for Jason, I've seen some for
yeah. Like
Michael.
Never Hike Alone is like one of the bigger ones.
Yeah. But one of the things that like I think that really helped it stand out was that animation style and like also playing around with claymation is because I feel like those are two styles that almost feel like a dead medium. And so like anytime that you have like I don't remember I, the company, I know it starts with an A, but like it's the company that produces like Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run,
Yeah,
um
yeah. I don't know it either,
you
but I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, so like they have this like very specific like claymation style, but it helps them really stand out because no one else is making films in that. So I liked that the film incorporated elements of that as well.
Yeah, and it was right in the style of the movie, which is of all the whole franchise, which is kind of started DIY and then just became kind of like put your own individual stamp on your entry, and it kind of like, it lived alongside that style.
Yeah, and
Um,
I also go ahead.
I'll go on. No, no, I was gonna finish up because I was gonna switch gears.
I was gonna just switch gears, like keeping on with it, but like I really liked this. All of the music was like specifically tailor made for this movie, and like all had this punk rock DIY edge to it, but like all lyrically speaking, it was all about like the Deadites and stuff.
Yeah,
Like watching the title sequence was one of my favorite parts.
yeah, that was fantastic. I was like, I don't usually get that hyped over a documentary like this, but I was like, oh, this song is hilarious. It actually kind of rocks. Like, I was like, I was into it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So since we're kind of like wrapping with the whole franchise here, what are kind of your thoughts about just Evil Dead going forward? I mean, I know we just had an entry, because I was thinking, I love this style of, making one with a new filmmaker, kind of having Sam Raimi produce it, behind the scenes, but not really getting involved. I kind of want to keep that up, but when we're talking about this animation thing, on the side, I wouldn't mind more Ash adventures done in a very stylized animation. And that
Yeah,
way Bruce Campbell could still be a part of it without having to break his back, because I know it hurts to be Ash.
yeah. Have you seen the there's this meme that went around a while ago, and it was like you basically you would take you would remake any movie, you'd keep one human character and the rest would be Muppets. Like I would love to see like an Evil Dead Muppet movie. I
Oh
thought
my
that would
God.
be like great, but
Yeah, that
my
would be fantastic.
my hopes for this future, man, is like I know that like following our recording of Evil Dead Rise, Lee Cronin, the director of that film, the latest entry, has like gone on record saying that like if it's profitable, they're hoping to make some every 2 or 3 years. And I will be honest, I have reservations about that. It might be a controversial take, but I have reservations about that.
It just be in terms of like them not being able to come up with like a fresh original take every time because it's so recent.
Yeah, so like I think that's one of the
I get that. Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons that I like this franchise so much, and the reason that all of the entries are really strong is because there's always been 5 to 10 years between each entry.
Yeah,
And
it's
in the
almost like they waited till they had an idea before, it's like why I always say I loved Halloween 2018 because it was like they had the idea and then convinced the studio to make it, as opposed to a studio convincing a filmmaker, write Halloween 10 and they're like, oh crap, I don't know. So
yeah,
I agree. I had the same fear with Scream. Thankfully so far I think they're doing a good job, but like I could do a little break. The fact that it was 1 year between the two Screams was kind of crazy for me.
and
I I really like this new one, but if it's scary, I'd rather wait 4 years, or at least,
same. Yeah, like I would love to wait like 4 or 5 years to before they do another one, or just even wait 3 years and do like a 30th anniversary style. Like
yeah,
you don't need it. But like I think for in terms of like Evil Dead, like I am all about. But I loved what they've done with the last two entries, and where like Raimi has basically gone after a not becoming like voice that has like one or two credits to his name, and have said, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the reins to make an Evil Dead movie. Like I enjoy that, and I feel like if you oversaturate this franchise, it loses what makes it special.
yeah. Um, I agree. I know we don't talk non-horror too much, but I have my slight controversial take in the action genre is I kind of feel that's what's happening with Mission Impossible, where I know most people are real on board with these last couple ones, but the first four, or I guess first five Mission Impossibles, all had a different director, and they were all about 4 or 5 years apart, and each one just feels like it's a completely different movie. The first one's a Brian De Palma mystery. The second one's a John Woo over-the-top action film. The third one's a J.J. Abrams kind of like plot MacGuffin mystery. Fourth one is a Brad Bird cartoon, and then fifth one's Christopher McQuarrie, and then the sixth one was also Christopher McQuarrie, and I like both movies, but they blend together to me. They kind of came
Yeah.
out within a few years of each other. They look exactly the same visually. So like, and now he's making the next two, and I just feel like I love those movies, but I'm now not as excited as I used to be. And I could see what you mean about Evil Dead, where potentially they just put too many out there and they lose that specialness, and each entry doesn't have its own footprint.
Yeah, and that's really difficult for a franchise to do because like I mentioned earlier, I love Saw, but if you are like referring to like a specific like entry in the first seven, because we got them all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you like specific things, except the needle pit from the second one, because that's probably the grossest one in the entire
yeah,
franchise. But like I couldn't like tell you specifics about any of those films because of how close together they are. And
yeah,
granted, that's an episodic, but I think we also saw that with the Scream 2 and 3, where they try to capitalize it and they end up shooting themselves in the foot and creating the lowest point in the franchise because of it.
yeah, yeah. So I think your fears are definitely founded. I kind of have faith. I hope Sam Raimi, like obviously we already talked about him a lot, where like obviously we don't love every movie in his entire career. It's not like he's infallible, but it seems like when it comes to Evil Dead, he's really good at kind of understanding all the elements of why people love it, whether
Yeah.
it's the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show, which is kind of for one fandom, or these new movies, which are kind of a different fandom. But all in all, it's all just still Evil Dead, and this guy seems to get it. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and hope, similar to Radio Silence with Scream, like them taking it over after Wes Craven died, which made me nervous. But and I thought they stumbled a little bit with Scream 5 if it wasn't my favorite, but I would love this last one.
Oh, I mean, I have 100% focus on that I have hope for it, but I also have a lot of um reservations for it as well.
Hmm.
So, you know,
Yeah, we'll
I
see.
we'll see. The
Have
only
you looked
future
at the
can hold.
box office numbers of this? When we recorded Evil Dead Rise, it was the day after it came out, so they didn't really have any. Did it do well? I haven't looked.
Yeah, it did actually. They let's look it up real quick.
I imagine it's not really too similar of a crowd of
Um, so currently its worldwide is 48 million. And it is going up against a budget of, I believe, 16 to 18 million. So
yeah,
relatively small.
I think that's more than enough to warrant a success because it's not done making money. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty great.
So it makes me excited that we are not over yet with this franchise. So, uh, but we are over with our Evil Dead April series.
Oh
So it
man.
comes to a close. Where can people find you online, Andy?
All right, you guys can find me at my other podcast, Love What I Love. You just search that anywhere podcasts are found, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at LWIL Podcast.
Yeah. So you guys make sure you guys go check out Love What I Love. It is one of my favorite podcasts. Andy and Masha are actually getting ready to get married. So they I think it's you guys have been on hiatus for it's kind of sporadic the last couple months, right?
Yeah, we since planning the wedding, we've been a little sporadic. So if there's any cross fans here who like both shows, we apologize for that. We still have some in the chamber we're gonna leak out soon, but we as we record this today, we got our marriage license at City Hall. We will be legally married in 3 days, and then we just have the celebrations, which are in May. And then after that, hopefully our schedules free up and we can get back to a semi-regular schedule on that.
Heck yeah. Well, congratulations on that. That's awesome, man.
Thank you, my friend. I'm very excited.
So you guys will be legally married by the time this episode comes out. So make sure that you guys stalk Love What I Love on Instagram and Twitter and all of their socials and just tell them congratulations and go check out their podcast. It's great, great. I've never felt the podcast that I've actually felt connected to both like co-hosts. Like I'm always like leaning like one side or the other, but like Masha is definitely like my like nostalgia, like movie love, and like you're like where I'm at now. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
it's
good
perfect.
blend.
No, and that's
Um,
why I mean when you had us on to do Bring It On, Cheer or Die, it was the perfect blend of everything. It was the kind of movie Bring It On, which Marshall loves, horror, which I love, and you who loves both, and we all came
yes.
together.
Yeah. Well, Andy, thank you guys. Thank you so much for co-hosting and being a part of this journey in this series. You guys can find me. I'm at Captain Nostalgia on Letterboxd. You guys can follow Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your podcast from, and you can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and wherever you guys get your podcast from. Remember, the longer that you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.